Americans who are against the Biden student loan forgiveness. Why? I don't disagree with it per se. But without setting up systems to keep school costs in check, we will get this crisis to reoccur every few years as college costs keep skyrocketing. Before federal student loans were guaranteed, college was nowhere near this expensive. Loan forgiveness doesn't make sense unless you also stop giving out the loans. Universities were able to increase their tuitions so much because everyone was getting guaranteed student loans. And now you're putting down precedent that the loans can be forgiven. Does that sound wise to you? I'm against it as a solution, because schools will still charge $100,000 per year and lenders will still keep making ridiculous loans. If the actual student loan program were reevaluated, loan forgiveness wouldn't be an issue. I think cutting the interest to 1% makes more sense. I asked my coworker and he said, I worked hard all through college and afterwards to pay it off and only went to college that I knew I could afford, and I think it's unfair that people go to overpriced colleges and are suddenly forgiven. I only disagree with it because it doesn't address the fundamental problem with these loans, which is the predatory interest rates that make them damn near impossible to pay off. The government should be regulating those rates so students aren't being gouged and can actually pay the loans off with reasonable interest. Edit. Just want to clarify, I'm pro loan relief. I just wish more was being done to address the core issue with these loans. But I would rather the government do something instead of continuing to do nothing. 1. It doesn't fix the problem, which is the absurd cost. Forgiving debt probably makes it much worse, as future students are going to think they too will eventually get their loans forgiven, making them willing to borrow, spend even more. 2. The largest benefits go to people solidly in or on their way to being among the higher earners in our country. 3. It will exacerbate resentment of the less well-educated, who already feel they get a raw deal, further polarizing our society. I think these issues could be addressed with more thoughtful programs. I'd forgive interest only, and make future loans interest-free. But I'd also cap costs at the institution level, not just borrowing limits or costs paid by students, but an all-in cap that includes all tax dollars and tuition. And I'd place some default risk back on the institutions. I'd make tuition and student loan payments tax deductible and require institutions to use their endowments to reduce costs further. I'd expand the entire program to vocational education. It's treating a symptom and sets an enormously bad precedent. I had someone tell me recently that they had their kid take out loans instead of using the money they set aside because of the chance of forgiveness. Solve the college cost problem first by reforming the loan system that encourages college bloat. From admin to amenities. Limit loans to X for an undergrad degree. You want to go to Stanford? Pay up or get scholarships. Figure out how to subsidize the needy with a different and separate system. Those folks need as much help with living expenses as they do with college expenses. Reddit loves to compare college cost with Europe but doesn't compare the relative luxury of our experience. And they certainly don't have the ridiculous admin bloat. A college professor acquaintance of mine described the absolute flood of email from admin when COVID hit as a huge red flag of all the useless roles that exist in the system as these people tried to justify their existence. They are an unnecessary part of the cost of a college degree. Nothing is being forgiven. It is just being reassigned for others to pay. Because it won't change the for-more-profit mindset of the college system, at all, and will maybe even make it worse in the very near future. Yes, it'll help tons of people now, but next week? Next year? Problem not solved. I'm against it because the government are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. If student debt was so bad that it should be forgiven, then why are the same loans being made to new students now? I'd have some capacity for the idea if it was done after the government putting an end to any new student loans. But that's not the case. At the end of the day, the student promised to pay the debt back, so they should do so. I know this is not a popular view, but it's quite an important moral in my view. That's not to mention that the taxpayer is going to be picking up the tab for this anyway, which is hardly a good idea when we struggle as a nation, financially, as it is. Wasn't this asked like 2 days ago? 1. It doesn't solve the core problems with the education system being overly expensive for what it provides. 2. The burden of paying just gets passed on to the taxpayer, which is the middle class, because the rich can just use their money to avoid paying much of their taxes. Make the banks pay for charging excess interest, or the schools pay for giving out BS degrees that no one will hire. 3. It is inflationary in nature. Think of what you'll do when your loan is forgiven with the new money. Now multiple it by the millions more who will be doing that same thing. You really think you'll be able to get that new car or down payment on a house when every other person with their newly forgiven loans are doing the same thing? 4. It is unfair for the people who paid their own way through school or already paid their loans. I'm not going to get a refund for working part-time through school to pay for my education when I could have partied instead. Yet, the inflation and taxes will affect me. Ultimately, I think it's just a bad policy. It preys on voters thinking that this will just solve all of their problems when it really won't. Because it doesn't address the primary issue that it claims to address, and there are way better options to address said issue. It's primarily a political bluff to win over young and emotional voters by insinuating there's a $10,000 check waiting for them if they vote Democrat in the next election. If you want economic relief, tax the rich more, tax corporations fairly, and regulate the healthcare industry to reduce prices. Any one of these three options have a higher ROI for the average student, let alone average American. I have two concerns. One is economic and the other is political. For a little about me. I graduated with a loan far above the average, which I've since paid off. I consider myself lucky in this regard. 1. Will doing this be inflationary? If so, we need to exercise caution since the Fed is attempting to reduce inflation and struggling to do so. Interest rates continue to increase, and if we're not careful, we could make a potential recession worse. There will be more layoffs in housing, which is already difficult to obtain for a lot of recent college graduates, might become unattainable for the foreseeable future. 2. This is a policy that benefits a group, college graduates, who heavily support the Democratic Party. Should the Democrats, who are currently losing working class folks, be treating college graduates as a special interest group voting bloc? Some folks on the right are starting to perceive higher education as an enemy, and I fear actions like these may reinforce that view and hurt the nation. Edit. For the commenters engaging in good faith with counterpoints, appreciate it. I'll address some things I'm reading. The rest of you need to see that the majority of people just want what's good for their friends, family and the nation, despite what Twitter and the media portrays. For those assuming my political affiliation, I am a Democrat. But I try to hear from and talk to everyone. It's best not to assume bad intent. Folks might be surprised what they can learn from others. I see some of you have highlighted greater spending from those who have received this benefit as a plus. While I agree that could be an effect, I'm concerned about the impact of that increased spending. The goal of increased interest rates by the Fed is to reduce spending. Whether it's enough to cause an impact, I am not sure. This is why I urge caution. Additionally, what happens after this policy is through? Is assistance a one-time thing? It doesn't address root cause, which I think is runaway cost of public education. Hopefully research supporting the policy turns out to be accurate and my concern is unfounded. One of you made the point that the benefit would go to a large number of folks who do not hold a degree. That's an excellent data point and worth highlighting. It makes an excellent counter-argument against point 2. Thank you for that. My concern here is I worry Americans are sorting themselves politically by their level of education. This cannot be healthy for the nation. Working class people do feel left behind, and asking them to pay for this might feed into the narrative that the Democrats are becoming the party of the wealthy. I don't want education to become a political label marker, though it might be too late. From some of the responses I get the sense that some of you believe that ship has sailed, so we should just move forward and hope the potential benefits speak for themselves. Edit 2. Striking the words, special interest group, in favor of voting block, as I think it conveys my meaning better.